Okay, we are live.
All right. Welcome back to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It's February 26th, and we are here to continue our discussion of H125, an act relating to reporting on the energy transition. And just to, because our agenda keeps changing, just so folks know what we're doing between now and floor. Our agenda's been updated online, but we are here with Legislative Council now. We'll go around and introduce ourselves in a minute. And Ellen can show us the latest draft that we asked her to prepare. And then we're also going to dive right into a discussion of the suggested language that Secretary Moore provided at our request. So we'll kind of talk about both of those things. Then at 2:00, assuming we're done, we are going to vote on our budget letter and just by straw poll. And then at 2:30, Secretary Moore has agreed to quickly join in, and she'll talk to us a little bit about her language. And then at 3:00, we applaud and we're done for the day. And then Ellen, based on our conversation today and Secretary Moore's language and our conversation around that, Ellen is going to bring us a new draft of the bill based on everything we decide today, Friday at 11 a.m. And then we're going to vote on that bill after town meeting break. Okay. Great. I'm sorry, I'm Representative Kathleen James from Bennington 4 District.
Scott Campbell, St. Johnsbury, Calgary, Essex.
Richard Bailey, Memorial 2.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2. Christopher Howland, Warren 4.
Territory, Warren 2. Warren 2. You can tell what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Graham Putner, Sydenham 13, Burlington.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 2.
Great. And we always ask folks in the room to introduce.
Chris Lefla, a graduate student at the University of Vermont, here for a policy systems class. And I should also mention I work for the Department of Buildings and General Services in the Energy Office.
Super. All right, for the record.
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. I'm here today on draft 1.1 of the committee's amendment to H125. Should be posted on your website today. So I was here a couple of days ago. I walked through H125 after you heard all the testimony. You requested some changes, and so the draft reflects those changes. It does not reflect Secretary Moore's proposed language because that came in only this morning. And so I'll walk you through what you all discussed last time, and then you will determine the changes you want to make based on what Secretary Moore is also suggesting. So this is a strike all amendment. I don't think you have done one yet because this is the first bill you're doing a full markup on. So there's a couple different ways that we structure amendments. Committees largely prefer to do what we call a strike all, which means we strike everything that was in the text of the bill as it was introduced and insert all new language. We can also do what we call a surgical approach, or an instance by instance set of amendments, which is where you're only amending part of a bill as it was introduced. But because you are, this bill is only one section long, it's a strike all because you're amending most of that. So this is just, in the future, you may see instance by instance of amendments in other committee bills. That often happens with large bills where they just want to pick a couple different things to change. So they have a slightly different structure. Strike-alls are the easiest to read. So it doesn't really matter for your purposes. It's more so it's an easier way to read what the committee is actually doing.
Great.
So section 1, there's only one section in this bill except for the effective date. And so we're still adding a new section to Title 30, 8012. That is something that you can consider if you, when we talk about Secretary Moore's language, if this is the proper location on the statutes to put it. I'll think about that too. But I had proposed adding it to the renewable energy chapter because it was looking at renewable energy impacts. So that's where it is currently, but you also can decide to change that if it makes more sense based on where you're going.
Okay.
So the language now reads on or before January 15th of each year, the Department of Public Service, in consultation with relevant state agencies, shall analyze and report on Vermont's clean energy transition, which shall include identifying regional energy access gaps, tracking costs, and reviewing workforce development. So the language on 11 and 12 is the language that Representative Sibilia had in her proposed language. And I wanted to sort of point out tracking costs and reviewing workforce development. I do think tracking costs is part of what you're doing here, but I wasn't sure if reviewing workforce development captures exactly what the bill is doing.
I don't think it does, but Representative Sibilia, are you?
Yeah, I would like to suggest that we remove that as an objective of this.
What about tracking costs?
Yes, yes, tracking costs, yes, but workforce development, I don't think we've been able to get good good cooperation on that or data on that.
And what costs are we tracking? Sorry.
Exactly what I was about to ask.
So you do have the electric vehicle, or I'm sorry, the electric rate and their changes. And that is also in Secretary Moore's language, the trend of electric rates.
Yeah. Right now, I mean, I think we talk about the energy burden in Vermont in kind of a monolithic way, and it's not. And that is the point of this, is to help us understand which places in Vermont are seeing a bigger pinch.
Rep. Sibilia, and we'll get to this. Secretary Moore has totally different Section A language, so we'll talk about that when we get there. But focusing only on this draft, would it be? I'm getting a little bit hung up on tracking costs too. Do you think that it would capture the overall intent of this bill to say, which shall include identifying regional energy access gaps and tracking disparities
in costs? So for instance, like in we have a particular electric utility who has significantly higher rates than the other utilities. So there may be other things going on there, like that we should understand. In fact, there probably are other things going on there that we should understand. But when we're talking about the energy transition, we're talking about it in very, very broad sweeps. You know, we're talking about affordability on different for the whole state. And in fact, people are feeling this very differently throughout the state.
Can I suggest something?
Yes.
Let's starting with, we shall include identifying regional energy access gaps and the impacts on and the economic and affordability impacts.
Was that at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really against using the word affordability unless it's defined, because it just means what people want it to mean.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not here. I'm not there. So, and I'm not looking at that.
Maybe just economic impacts then.
Okay.
Identifying regional energy access gaps and their economic and the economic impacts of those gaps and their economic impacts.
Yeah, I mean, so there's not a gap in this utility that I'm thinking about. There's actually oversubscription in this utility that I'm thinking about. So it could be gaps and
Energy price trends.
Imbalance, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, unique regional
Yeah.
impacts.
How about that? the reason I keep trying to take out tracking costs is that I get what you're getting at, but the only cost we're actually tracking is electric rates, and everything else is not actually a cost tracker in your draft. So I was just trying to get something
Okay.
higher since this is we're describing the purpose of the whole thing. And it's not much of a cost tracker yet.
Yeah, you know what we haven't asked is about any regional differences in the cost of delivered fuels, because that gets also reported.
To tax.
Well, the reporting by the DPS is also like just kind of state level data. And of course, we don't regulate those prices. So,
All right. Well,
we have-
my thought would still be something higher level, which would be something like which shall include identifying regional energy access gaps and then just something a little bit higher level that isn't tracking costs. So maybe give that some thought.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Thanks, Ellen.
So down on line 13, the report shall include the number of gas stations operating within the state, and if there was any change in the number in the prior year. Then did you want to add location of gas stations?
yes.
There is that section 6 below, which asks for maps showing the data required, which would give us locations.
Reading ahead.
Yeah.
So,
What's it doing?
Ellen, I have a question for you. I just want to make sure, we talked about this last time we went through the bill, that the data we're listing, not that we put it in the language, but we know in our minds exactly where it's coming from so that we're not requesting data that doesn't exist or going beyond the scope of the bill. So, based on the testimony we heard today from Ag, which was about metered gas pumps, should we change that to the number and location of gas pumps?
Yes.
Yes, pumps.
Well,
Why-
that's
why
what
do
they
we-
meter.
Well, but we could query their data and just by unique address of gas pumps, and then we would know the number of gas station locations, and their location. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So we don't need to know the number of gas pumps, really. I mean, some gas stations have 10 pumps, or whatever, 9
Yeah.
pumps.
But if we don't list that as a data point, Representative Campbell, perhaps the Agency of Natural Resources will just count tanks and not pumps.
Mhm.
Do we want to know the pumps?
Yes.
Why?
Because
Why?
Because that indicates the size of the gas station.
Well, it would matter to us if the number of pumps in the kingdom went from 150 to 100. Even if the number of gas stations stayed the same, I would think. The gas stations are taking pumps out of service.
So that's,
Doesn't change the number of gas stations, but changes the number of pumps.
so you're saying, well, all we need is locations of the stations.
Saying both.
Yeah, I'm saying we could, it is possible we care about the
Oh.
number of pumps and the locations.
Okay, well, anyway, if we had that information, we could lead from that the number of locations. Because the number of pumps at their locations.
well, let's add and locations. The number and locations of gas. And then maybe we can ask Secretary Moore. Stations, can we flag to ask stations versus pumps? And sorry to be so dogmatic. I just want to make sure we're lining up our bill exactly with existing. Yeah.
The modern pump draws from 3 different tanks, even 4 if it has diesel, depending on which button you press. So whether there are 9 pumps at a station in a large community or 1 pump with 4 tanks at the, I think you're really looking for the availability of gasoline. In this case, gasoline within a geographical location that fuel is available and where the next closest fuel is available.
Okay,
I
so,
agree.
so does that mean stations? Pumps.
I think stations are tanks. I think the tank they're drawing, not even tanks per se, because you get 4 tanks if you have diesel and 3 grades of gas. So is that defined as one station?
I think it's stations as defined by where the pumps are.
All right,
One address.
so maybe we can run that by Secretary Moore and, because the info is gonna come from Ag, so I'm sure she'll know, she'll have a thought on that, I'm sure.
Yeah, the cultural data, it may be 1 year past because they testify that they inspect them annually. So if they inspect them on a Yelp route, if you will, across the state or in a region, the fact that that station or that pump is no longer in service is because it doesn't get inspected when it is due 1 year after it was last inspected.
Okay,
So it may be very lagging.
okay. And I see language in Secretary Moore's suggestion that'll start to get at that thing she talked about, which is that over time they can start to add more leading indicators to this as opposed to the stuff that we're seeing after the fact. Okay,
Next, the number of heating fuel sellers operating in the state, the volume of heating fuels delivered in bulk by those sellers, and if there was any change in the number and volume in the prior year.
okay. And do we know if that lines up with the info that we can get from the tax department? That was the intent, right? I thought that was tax can get us aggregate sales data. And probably aggregate number of grade. Rep Sibelia?
Are you muted? No, you're not muted. Well, that would tell us,
Yeah, sorry, I was muted.
oh,
Yeah, I think it's tax, Madam Chair.
Okay,
but that would tell us, if I may, that would tell us, the number of gallons from, say, Fred's Fuels, but not, the number of gallons from each location of Fred's Fuels. That's the level of data we're looking for, right?
yeah,
Okay.
and the level we can get.
That's the level we can get. Right.
All right, so the number of sellers and the volume is based on info we can get from the tax department. Okay, all right,
The number of electric vehicle supply equipment in the state, and if there was any change in the number in the prior year.
Again, we want locations.
I think we do. Let's just go ahead and specify number and location, and then I know that you catch it later with the map thing, but
Yeah.
okay, so the number of and location.
Yep.
Alrighty,
Electric rates and whether there were any changes.
okay,
On to page 2. The number of renewable energy development companies operating within the state.
all right, now this,
Yeah,
this we can't quite
right.
get at. But Secretary Moore seems to think that she can get at some 5-year trend data from labor or commerce. And I think we could ask her about that. It came down to trying to identify codes, right? Rep. Sibilia?
Yes.
What's at the?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think we'll probably need to
That might be a
strike,
phase 2.
yeah, maybe strike that for now. And then when we go through Secretary Morris, my hope with Secretary Morris, is we'll go through her list and say, okay, where are you getting this? Where are you getting that? Okay.
Yeah, so then on page 2, line 3, I add this sentence, map showing data required in this subsection.
I think that's an excellent idea. However, I'm applying to all of section B, which includes the heating oil distributors, which I don't know are particularly amenable to mapping.
Yes, it was slightly unclear to me the types of maps you were looking for.
So, I mean, I think the number of the number of gas stations and the number of charging stations, I think, is the data which will be most helpful to look at on a map. So perhaps that section 6 map showing the data required in the subsection B numbers 1 and 3.
How about, just so we don't limit other data that could be mapped and we're just not thinking about it, like, yeah, maps showing the data that can be mapped in attorney speak.
Yeah, so I guess the other thing you could do, I was wondering if it could go back to the beginning and say, back maybe in A, something like graphical representations of the data in this report and maps. I think when I was here last, you were discussing actually different kinds of maps, like either mapping this data individually with its sets or overlaying them with each other. So it does seem like you want this data in some different forms, but graphically available so that it's easier to see. So yeah, I could probably put something in the first, maybe just pull it up into A and say, the report showing. Did that make sense? Like graphic displays of
the report
data that can be shown on a map or something.
Yeah. How about, put it up top and say the report shall also include to the greatest extent possible maps.
I wonder if we should specifically ask for including at least gas stations and charging stations.
Yeah, to make sure that's, yeah. Well, maybe it does go at the end then. So maybe at the end we say maps to include at a minimum points 1 and 3.
And I think to make this more useful without making it any more work for anyone, they generate these maps in year 1, and that's nice. We have maybe 2 maps, one shows gas stations, one shows charging stations. The next year, they generate the same 2 maps. And it'd be nice to look at them next to the ones from the previous year.
Yeah.
They'd already created. It's no more work, but so starting in year 2, just this year's and the previous years. So that we can look and say, oh, look, a bunch of gas stations disappeared. Or, wow, that's unexpected. There's more gas stations this year than this year. Or whatever. So the maps
good.
may tell us.
Okay. Onward.
So on page 2, line 4, the state agencies that collect data related to the topics in subsection B of this section shall provide the department with relevant data for this report. Then subsection D, for the report due January 15th, 2026, the department include data from the past 5 years.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's great.
And the last provision is a provision that we're, make sure that the report doesn't ever expire.
Okay.
The standard clause. So I guess there is a big picture question here of, it did seem like the committee was asking that the first report, which would be in 2026, had historical data from the past 5 years. And it's just phrased in subsection D as for that one.
Yeah.
The other elements in subsection B do ask about change year over year. And so that would then be moving forward, asking if there was a change in this year's data from the prior year. Secretary Moore's language just frame it slightly differently. But it did seem like what you all were discussing last week was that first was a larger historical data set, and then moving forward was year over year.
Should we look at Secretary Moore's language, or should we button up? Do you think it's okay? Ellen, as you've written in our draft, do you think it'll be clear that that first report is going to contain the next 5 years, and then every year we wouldn't, as written, we're not going to see a report in January 2027 that doesn't include past years.
Yeah, I didn't think that necessarily was what you were asking for. Is that what you want?
That I think what we want is that we'll start with a 5-year look back. And then in my mind, every year they would just look back at they'd have 5 years, and then we'd add a year and drop a year and add a year or something like that. But what do you guys think?
Seems like we start with going back 5 years and then just
Keep adding a year.
keep accumulating data because it'll give us a trend line.
Okay. That's right. Yeah.
So
every year they'll add one more year of data to the set.
And so they don't need the past 5 years.
Yeah. So
Well, the first report would be for the past 5 years,
Mhm.
and then subsequent years would be adding on to that, however you phrase that.
we'll have 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years worth of data.
I think you two are saying different things. Are you saying different things?
No, there's
I
no
don't think so.
No, we start with a look back for 5 years, and then in subsequent years, we'll get an update that would add the past year. So that we'll be creating a record of this data that will give us a trend line to begin to assess the economic impacts of the energy transition. Did that make sense?
It did make sense. That's not what this says though, like the whole first part. So I do think we should probably look at Secretary Moore's language because she's proposing something sort of different.
The first part then.
No, because I wrote it as though operating within the state and any change in just the prior year. So
Prior
Oh,
year,
yeah,
prior
right.
year, prior year.
yes. So, right.
yeah.
So these two things are not congruent. That's right.
Right.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's a huge difference. I think Secretary Moore's language is proposing sort of a slightly different thing about forecasting,
Okay.
but so we can continue to figure out how you want to structure that.
Yeah, I see what you're pointing out. A lot of prior year
Yeah.
language, but yet we'll be adding more to the database every year. Huh. All right. Maybe the way Secretary Moore frames it avoids question complete.
So you could describe the first report covering the previous 5 years, and then subsequent reports, including the previous year, as the global characteristics of the report, under which all of these something like that. Does that make sense?
It does. You tell me. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
That's what I
You
thought
could
was trying to
structure.
get at.
You could structure it that way.
Maybe we should ask Rep. Sevilla, but that's what I thought we were trying to get at.
Friends. Reps, Delia.
Are you muted, Laura?
Apologies. Could you say that again, Rep Campbell?
We've been talking about, sorry, you're not feeling well. We've been talking about, the language in the initial bill talks about asking for data from the prior year. But we also have sort of talked about the concept of going back 5 years. For the first year report would go back 5 years, and then subsequent annual reports would report in the prior year. So that we're starting to build a data set that gives us trend lines about all these data points. Isn't that what we're trying to get at?
It is really looking at what is happening over time. And I like the idea of asking for 5 years previous, and let's see what folks say. If we're dealing with existing data sets, it seems like, this data analysis should not be that hard.
All right, why don't we? Oh, sorry, Representative Bailey?
Yeah, on line 21, didn't, and I'm not sure who gave us the testimony, but didn't they think we should be using just presidential electric rates?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Do you want to, are we dealing with the ANR letter now or?
I think we're gonna try to pre-talk about it, because I think when Secretary Moore comes in, she's here for like 15 minutes. So when we're ready, now we've seen like our draft. And then I think we should walk through Secretary Moore's stuff. Representative Havlin?
You're looking at energy for transportation, and it's the people that are using electricity charging. Why would you want the residential rate? I think you'd also want any special rate for EV charging rates, which is
It's a type, isn't it? A type of residential.
it's a subtype. It's in the Green Mountain Power world, rates have numbers. Residential rate is rate 1. The current energy charging that I've been exposed to is called a rate 74, a rate 70, 72, 74, 76. I don't remember the exact numbers, but so that they're a special tariff, which may include time of day. If any of you remember back when the electric hot water heater had a "don't wash the baby." So you've only got a reduced rate. There used to be what they called a rate 11, which was and some heating rates that gave you economic advantage for time of use, and the whole energy world is also going to time of use incentives to control their load.
Now, while we're on this subject, I personally would also like to see uptake information from the utilities about enrollment in that, because that's a trend that would be interesting to see. Because it's not just, oh, we have a rate. We have a rate that's accessible and people are actually taking us up on it.
That's a great point. So I noticed that both Ellen and Secretary Moore just say current electric rates, but maybe for now on our draft, we could just try something like electric rates and whether there were any changes. Do we ever say including residential and EV charging rates? And I want to make sure we get both of those, and that I really like that idea of uptake. So maybe we should fiddle around with that.
In general, the rates follow the same curve. They go up by relative percentage. So somebody spoke of trends with the closing of gas stations. So quoting a single residential rate will show the trend without getting into the specifics of any number of rates that, you know, you may get multiple rates, which nobody understands unless they're on their rate. Their numbered rate, if they even know they're on a numbered rate, they just, this is what the bill is, that's what I pay. So I revert back to if you just keep the residential rate, the other rates follow the same relative slope line.
And I think, weren't you saying though that you also wanted to see how many people were basically installing home chargers to take advantage of that charging rate, right?
So
Is that where you were going, Victoria?
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes utilities, you don't really know how they're communicating with their, it just varies. But if you have more than just what the rate is and what the adoption of the rate is, it seems like.
Could we add something along those lines, Ellen?
Who are we gonna get that data from?
GMP would have it.
I
Well,
think
GMB, I mean, I
department-
send you
I think
around,
the department
their
would be able to
current
get
enrollment.
The
it.
department.
It's
Yeah.
aggregated data.
they have that, do they?
Okay. Why don't we look at Secretary Moore's suggestions? It's the same but different. Jack, could you put Secretary Moore's testimony or letter up on the screen for us?
Yep, give me 1 second.
Okay,
This somewhere.
we do. It's in, I sent it around.
9:13 this morning.
Ah. Oh, there it is. And Ellen, as we go through thoughts, definitely want to hear thoughts because you're the pro here.
Maps.
Maps, add the maps.
Anyway, CPG.
Certificate of Public Good.
I believe this is what you're looking for.
No. That's not it.
I printed something out. I'm going to print more.
Yeah. That's not the one, Jack. Let me see if it's up on the,
Does everybody want me to print one?
Yeah.
I've got it up on my screen.
Yeah, I'm good.
okay, you can take that.
Does anybody want me to print one?
Yeah, you can take that down, Jack.
Everybody.
No, I'm hearing nobody wants one.
Okay, everybody's got it? Ellen, do you have it though? Okay. Alrighty, so, should I start moving us through or do you want to?
Either is fine.
So we're,
Oh, found it.
Okay, I think we've all probably got it, Jack.
but we're at, it was sent to you Wednesday, the 26th, 6:47 AM.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted,
Okey doke. And Jack, if you're looking for it to get it posted, it was an email I sent to the full committee and you subject /H125 at 9:13. Why does mine say PM?
I don't know.
It was AM, right?
AM.
Yeah, at 9:13 AM, and it says committee has requested See below the suggested language for H125 that we requested. Jack, please post. That's the one. Alrighty, so. Alrighty, well, the first thing I notice is that Secretary Moore has taken on responsibility for the report. So not DPS, but rather A&R to be the lead on this. And I think that's not news to us. It sounded like she had, in her testimony, she had said that A&R might want to take the lead. Rep Sibelia, is that anything, is that alarming to you for any reason, or looks like Secretary Moore's agency wants to take the lead on this?
I mean, if she's offering to, I think, that's great. Energy is not what she does, but okay.
Okay. I think we should add to her list, the Agency of Agriculture.
Yes, 100%. She is doing, I mean, she's doing a lot of data analysis through the climate office, but this is not like, this is really understanding the economic transition, energy transition, how people are experiencing it. So,
Yeah.
but I noted she's listing the other agencies there. So,
and I think we'd want to, well, down in her section C, she talks a little bit about the purpose of the report, but I think we would probably want to shall publish a report which highlights existing data sources and indicators. And I don't know, Laura, if you'd want to add, probably ask Ellen to meld some of your purpose language in there.
I think so. And by region. Sorry, I'm still checking now.
So I have something. So this starts with subsection A, on or before December 15th, 2025. So as is phrased in your amendment currently, it's on or before January 15th of each year. And so this does seem like a one-time report in what Secretary Moore is proposing. And she's also proposing moving up to December 15th. Both December 15th and January 15th are sort of classic report deadline dates. December 15th is nice because it's before the holidays. January 15th also makes sure that at the end of the year data is captured. January or December is definitely up to you all. But I do think there is a question of if she is proposing single one-time report.
Yeah. One thing she is not proposing is anything having to do with geography, which I would say is a very important thing that I support helps us understand. So not necessarily looking for aggregate numbers for the state.
Okay. Where are we?
And so in A, I might say, after A, I might say by region.
Okay.
Or county. But by region. Well, no, we probably should define it. County.
By county, or do you think by region is broader in case not all this data tracks by county?
That's fine. Well, I mean, it's probably not tracking by region then either. It would be my guess. So, I mean, the purpose is really to understand if, Cabot is experiencing a bigger burden than Burlington, or Wardsboro is having a much harder time accessing gasoline than Brattleboro. Although they're pretty close. Does Ellen have a suggestion on the region versus county?
No, I mean, I think region makes sense, but I mean, I think apps that are so graphic displays
Yep.
of what's happening around the state.
By region, right? So, I mean, we don't. So, I'm looking at the data here. You know, current electric rates. The report right now that's listed. If it's not by geography, it might take an hour, maybe two, to compose. Maybe three. So it'll give us a broad perspective of the state in general.
Okay. Alrighty, and then Secretary Moore has a pretty detailed list of data. A lot of which tracks with Ellen's draft. So we have electric rates and forecast electric rates, which I like. And Ellen, we were going to maybe put in there a little bit more about enrollment and different rates. Megawatts of distributed solar installed in CPG. Heating fuel sales 5-year trend. I think that's from tax, and that's where we were also hoping to see
Number of sellers.
Yeah, number of sellers. I was gonna say, I know it's not location. Number of sellers, so that's all from tax department. Weatherized homes, 5-year trend by income quintile. I'll be curious to see where she's getting that. That's interesting.
Well, Efficiency Vermont tracks that they do, and we do also have it might be in the comprehensive energy plan because there's been a building weatherization goal for 10 or more years in statute. So someone is collecting that data. It might be DPS.
Okay. Firms and workers in the thermal sector trades, 5-year trend. That's interesting. I want to ask her where she's getting that. I assume that's ACCD or VDOL, but she must have a beat on that.
Well, so Efficiency Vermont also probably is because they have their excellency network of people that do their work for them. And then also TJ did come in here and talk about the report that their office does, which I can't remember the exact title, but it's something around workforce, electric workforce or something. They have they are also tracking it.
Okay. Transportation fuel sales, 5-year trend. That I'm curious to square that up with the way we have it worded from ag. So I think we're going to need to sync that up.
Yeah, I think this is different than what you were asking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's one I think.
Because I can't give you fuel sales.
Right.
That's gotta come from tax, right?
Or
Yeah.
DMV.
Or DMV,
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're curious about that. Electric charging stuff. That's fast chargers and level 2. So does anybody know, or I'd be curious to know if that includes home chargers?
No.
No.
That seems like that would be in the first item. Current electric rates and forecast rates is,
Right.
as Victoria was suggesting.
Okay. Right, that's how we get at the home chargers, hopefully through the folks enrolled in the taking advantage of the EV charging rates at home.
Yep.
Okay. Vehicle registrations, I like that one. EVs, new, used, gas. Also fuel consumption per unit of economic output. Okay,
Ask her
I
about
have to ask her about that one. Is there anything, Ellen, that is in?
So you focus on gas stations, you focus on heating fuel cellars and maps. I think those are sort of the three things that are not in her list. Additionally, I go back to my first question. It looks like she's pitching a one-time report. You all have it currently drafted as an annual report.
Yeah, I mean, it's only useful if it's an annual report.
But she does have the 5-year trends in there for a lot of these.
A 5-year trends at her snap in time. This
Right.
was looking back 5 years.
Yeah.
She's not talking about another report.
Yeah, it looks like she's proposing future reporting requirement recommendations based on this.
Yeah, what about this, the whole section C? I mean, what we're trying to get is a good analysis here.
Right.
So if it would be, besides being digging down into the data, I mean, what we're really after is a good analysis. So it'd be nice to have some of this language in there.
I think her section C is really important. So what are the data gaps? Where could we find an identification of existing reports and requirements that may support the reporting of relevant indicators? I think that gets to her idea of leading indicators. We want to ask her about that. I like the consideration of equity and just transition indicators, the benefits and burdens, and recommendations for future reporting requirements. I think that's where we just want to say this is an annual report.
So I do think that's definitely, I think the committee has been leaning that way. I do think the last time I think she was here, she was pitching sort of a first report and then doing, it sounded like, is this the data sets you actually want moving forward, or should you be looking to be creating new data sets?
That's right.
And so, and then I think there is also perhaps a question of, there's the state comprehensive energy plan, but there is also annual updates and biennial updates from the Department of Public Service that I think captures some of this information. And so there's also the climate action plan. So perhaps she will be pitching that some of this could be captured in a different report. I do think you should probably ask her though, when she's here.
Okay. All right. Well, so we got through, this is great. We got through your draft. We got through the outline here. Next steps will be, just to go back over what our next steps are. We have Secretary Moore at 2:30. We don't have her for very long, but we can have a quick conversation. And then Ellen, will you watch the Secretary Moore conversation on YouTube? Okay.
Yeah.
And then you'll be back on Friday with a bill draft based on everything we've said today and everything we hear from Secretary Moore, and then you're going to somehow try to merge these two.
Yes. And
Okay.
so during that conversation with Secretary Moore, if you want to say, this is a good thing to add to the draft.
Okay.
Or some clear indication for
Okay.
me to go by.
All right.
You could do that
All right.
as well.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yep.
Why don't we vote on our budget letter and then take a break and come back at 2:30?
Do I get to vote?
Yes, you do. It's a straw poll, but yeah. So, thank you so much. Thanks, Alan. Today's feeling very whirlwindy. Did I send the final? Yes, I did. Okay. 12:21 p.m. from me. Final budget letter. And then Jack, do you have your hands on that yet?
Yep, I've posted it on the webpage.
Oh, great. Can you put it up on the screen real quick?
Were there any changes from what we looked at before?
I deleted the highlight.
Sorry, I'm colorblind anyway, so that was.
Are you really? Oh,
I am colorblind, but I can see that.
Yellow.
It's a little more subtle than,
In case the difference between the blue and the.
it's green and reds. I'm looking at a bush with red berries.
Oh.
They don't pop at all.
Oh, wow.
Just-
Okay. I deleted the highlights and, oh, I'm sorry, made another change. I'm sneaky. I shrunk the logo to fit it on one page.
Oh.
I was trying to sneak that by you guys.
Change the font too, or?
Comic Sans. No.
Well, no, but you can go from. Yeah, I don't know, I wasn't here, but I just think about it.
There, I'm sure there is. Alrighty, so why doesn't everybody just give it a quick skim over? Let's make sure that it's looking good.
So, that's the. We struck the part about the upcoming project. About the eligibility. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the last paragraph, it says, through conversation with colleagues in house corrections and institutions, we learned. And then it said, we join them. Did I miss house corrections and institutions committee conversations?
I was the liaison to their committee.
All right.
So I met over the weekend with two of their members.
Okay.
Who
Yeah, I remember you talking about it. I just, the
vetted,
way it
vetted all
kind of
this.
implies that.
Yeah, no, they have taken testimony on this and.
Okay.
And the chair has also seen draft language. The three of them are happy.
They're in agreement with what we're.
They're actually.
Well, they're
more
recommending the
strongly
funding.
Advocating.
Yeah, we backed off.
Yeah.
Corrections is strongly recommending. The original language our committee looked at yesterday is what corrections is submitting.
Yeah.
So we softened ours.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make sure I'm not forgetting anything that happened. The only other potential budgetary flag that I felt like I heard was at the 10-year plan, telecom plan. When they said that those towers weren't anywhere in the governor's budget.
The mobile,
Yeah, I mean, they didn't, there was no specific ask to us, but they did flag that. I'm just thinking
Who flagged that?
committee that, well,
it was
I'm
in,
trying to remember his name, the telecom DPS guy was
Joint
For
session.
sure.
when Hunter
Hunter.
made his presentation, they mentioned sort of in passing that they would like to do a $3 or $4 million pilot with little mobile mini towers. But it's nothing we've taken testimony on or considered.
Yeah.
Right.
I would not be able to vote for this letter without taking a lot of testimony and passing H11.
Yeah, and I know where you're coming from on that, Rep. Sibilia, because you and I discussed it briefly, which is, it would be, yeah, public dollars without, so.
And there was nothing else, right? No other even.
I don't think so. I mean, we've actually, I think, been fairly exhaustive, in our, so we had our assignments were the four little numbers. And I feel like we've done a really good job of taking testimony on that and understanding where we're coming from. And then we talked about DOC because it really came to our attention so strongly during testimony from the broadband board and DOC. But I don't think this is the budget year for us to be getting out our fishing rod and looking for stuff that wasn't,
Oh, yeah.
pretty strongly brought to us. but I don't think we're missing.
Okay.
I don't think we're missing anything. So if we're ready, yeah, straw poll. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We did our
You
first
got-
thing.
You got me as a yes, right, Madam Chair?
Gotcha as a yes.
Are you gonna call for the names?
Huh?
You're not gonna call for the names?
No, sorry. That's so disappointing. Straw poll's just super boring. That's it. That was the straw poll. That was it.
Oh, well, you can't vote twice.
We'll have,
One edit for you.
oh, okay.
You put 2/26/2026.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
I
All right.
want to change.
Okay. I will fix that. Thank you. All righty. Jack, I have a typo to fix and then I will send it to you and I will send it to Approps. And we can
Alrighty.
go live. And